Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. And don't forget, we are very pleased to be part of the Variety Sports Network. Great group of guys to work with there. They have a ton of shows going, so I really encourage you to check it out. Baseball, NFL, college football, all kinds of good stuff going on there. And of course, I am originating this show from the Bradshaw Bourbon Studio. And I'm hoping as soon as the regular season starts, we're going to be getting out some Bradshaw Bourbon stuff here really, really soon. So you will notice that there is no one with me right now, and I sure as hell would like to know why. Of all the people that at least I know where they are, the one that did tell me is Ben. He's on vacation. I think he's been sloshed since about 10 a.m. Eastern this morning. I have no idea where he is. I think that's intentional. He's Burner, you are not the first person to tell me I sound like Seth Rogen. I've heard this before. My own students tell me that. So kudos, sir. I guess there's worse people. I don't quite have the marijuana habit he does, but there was a time. Ian is with us finally. I'm not going to have to do this all by myself.
I was told I was fired. So,
you asshole.
No, I'm. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Ian had to call a little audible here because the missus has some lady friends over watching a movie downstairs, which is my normal podcasting room. So I am relegated to being upstairs in a different location.
So you did not pull the hey, I have to podcast from this location card.
No, because I can podcast from anywhere. Hey, right, Ryan made it too. Right. Hey, I like the new background with the Bradshaw bourbon. Nice
little Bradshaw bourbons there. We got Scarps in here.
Looks lovely.
It's Burner's got some tequila going. What's everybody got tonight? I of course got the Bradshaw bourbon.
Yeah,
I am right polishing off my bottle of Redemption High Rye bourbon. Not the regular rye, the high rye bourbon.
High rye, man.
The high rye bourbon. Yes.
Yeah, I guarantee you, freak, Ben is not at a Mormon mini camp. No offense to our find looking for a girlfriend. Now that could be possible. You never know. Mason's burner has arrived. Yes, Scarps is here. He'll never admit to it, but he's absolutely Mason Rudolph's burner. Be that as it may. Great to see everybody tonight. And Aaron, that's a breaking news. The stash is gone. Scarps, explanation.
We'll let Casey touch on that a little bit later.
Okay. All right. Fair enough, my friend. Fair enough.
A teaser.
The teaser for Casey. Ahead. You gotta love that stuff, man.
But yes, it'll be back eventually, but it needs to be. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I can grow a beard, but it isn't that great. But yeah, I always seek perfection.
Oh, I see.
And like I'm always like trying to trim it too much or whatever, but like I'm gonna do a 3-month beard growth.
Ooh. All right.
So September, October, November.
Look at this guy.
And I'll keep it, no neck beard. We can't have any Andrew Luck going.
No, I'm the same way. I gotta shave that stuff. I can't do it
for 3 months, and then we'll either keep it that way or we'll have a big stash. Yeah, like ravishing Rick Rude. There you go, Aaron.
Oh, he was a character, man. That guy. What a great wrestling character Rick Rude was. The facial hair thing is not to everybody's liking, but thankfully on this show it seems to be pretty popular. And so anyway, we wish Ben well on his vacation. He will be back next week for our huge huge, monstrous, outstanding season preview extravaganza show. It'll be filled with predictions and extremely hot takes. I mean, we will have all kinds of stuff next week. You will not want to miss that one. And yeah, so we'll just leave it at that. Hey, the Steelers have a roster. It's a 53-man roster that, as any of you know that have been around long enough, you know it's fluid. Whatever that 53-man roster is at 4 p.m. of deadline day, it ain't going to last that way for long, and the Steelers has it. Obviously, they made a couple of trades. They brought in Desmond King. And so there's a lot to talk about, and also whether or not Omar Khan dabbles in sorcery. We'll mention that as well, because it's highly possible. But again, welcome in everybody that's watching the show live, and thank you to everybody who checks us out at your leisure, whether you listen to the show or check out the YouTube recording a little bit later when you got some time. But thanks everybody. Ian, I'm just going to start you off with this one. Is there one guy that to you was a surprise in terms of, hey, he made the roster?
Well, I mean, I think Braden Mann's the obvious answer.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised they kept both Sullivan and Riley at corner. I thought they would keep one of them and try and I actually thought they would probably keep Sullivan and try and get Riley through to the practice squad, although I was hoping they would keep Riley because I was impressed with him. And, as a kid coming out of Army and, said all the right things in his interviews, said, I just want to do what I can to help the team, very disciplined player, all that. But I was glad they kept both, and then they went out and signed Desmond King. So they're really deep at defensive back because you can never have enough cornerbacks.
No, you can't. And Desmond King is a guy that I think initially a lot of people thought, okay, he's coming in here to vie for that nickel corner slot corner position, and he may. We don't know. But he does have outside experience too. Mm-hmm. And he is capable of returning as well. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see how quickly he can get up to speed and maybe what they do with him. They've still got 10 days, as Vinny said, 10 days until we beat the 49ers. So
yes,
we'll see what goes there. Scarps, was there one person that you were a little bit surprised by that they kept?
I agree with Ian. I was surprised they have so many DBs, especially at that position. I would say I guess I am a little bit surprised that they kept both Gunner and Miles Boykin. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm skeptical about this offense because yes, I get your weapons, but after Deontay and George Pickens, Allen Robinson did not have a good year last year. Is he capable? Yes, but I don't know. But to me that means you're going to see more Gunner jet sweeps and some random fuckery, and not a lot of offensive snaps from Miles Boykin. But I'm interested to see and then obviously Calvin Austin is still an unknown. There's a lot, you've seen the preseason that, again, there's a lot to be optimistic about, but again, Matt Canada is still the coordinator. Yeah,
it's kind of like saying the Titanic is a really fine ship if it weren't for that 300-foot gash in the side. I mean, I can't remember how many times I've seen that in the last couple of days. Man, I'm really excited about this offense, but man, Matt Canada though, it's hilarious to me, but it's true. It's definitely true. So that may have been the more difficult question. So Ian, I'll give you what I think is probably the easier question.
Okay. You asked me first though last time. You can ask Ryan first this time.
Oh, all right. I'll ask Ryan. He's getting some zen there.
Look at how cordial the show is without our fourth member.
It's such a nice place, isn't it?
Fucking guy.
Where is that asshole? No. You realize he's going to show up in the chat at some point. I mean, he's probably 6 sheets to the wind. Well, it's probably Actually, he is.
He was
in any case,
that way at 10 o'clock this morning.
Right. Yeah, he's messaging us at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Scarps, who was the guy you were surprised didn't make the roster?
I'd probably go with Zach Gentry. Yeah. Either he has his foot. It's an injury that's not as close to coming. He's not as close to coming back as I thought. But
Must not be.
Huh?
Must not be.
Yeah. And but when you look at it, he's not as athletic as Darnell Washington is. They obviously have seen enough from Darnell Washington where they're comfortable with his blocking and where he's at. Fehoko, Aaron.
Yeah.
He's back on the practice squad, as is his. I think they signed his brother too. I mean, but this brother, this brother shit's getting out of control. I mean, I'm not saying I know I joke Connor Hayward ended up being a lot better than I thought he was gonna be, but Derek Watt was not good, right?
Right.
He just wasn't good. The brothers Herbig, one is hurt. The other is a fourth round pick that's small for the position he plays, but who knows? But this whole joke, Tomlin's has anybody got any brothers? Did he say brothers? Did he say relatives?
Yeah, he said brothers. He said anybody got a younger brother.
But I'm just I'm just sitting there thinking that doesn't always work. That doesn't always work. What are we doing here? But then again, who knows? I don't know.
They love familiarity. They always have, and I think and that obviously pushes it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, a little far. But Ian, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That said,
yeah,
one of the things I'm glad that Omar Khan has done, and sometimes this happens with a change of administration, and it's just easier to move on from the guys of the previous administration. But we always kind of blame Tomlin for having the Tomlin's guys that he liked to keep around.
For sure. Yeah.
But Omar Khan, as general manager, has not been tied to the guys of the previous administration. And that's not to knock on Kevin Colbert. But how many times do we see a guy stick around because you're like Jordan Dangerfield of the world, who was a good special teams player.
Yeah.
But just guys that they liked having, like your Marcus Allen. Marcus Allen might be a great example of a guy that was a special teamer, but couldn't find a role on defense and just stuck around for a long time. Whereas now we got rid of two offensive linemen that one was worthless and couldn't block. What
do you mean? He was mini fridge, man. The guy.
Oh, mini
guy. Yeah. The guy was about to score a rushing touchdown in the Super Bowl, and we gave up on him.
Well, look, Ian, you brought it up. Omar Khan, man, this dude is practicing in some sort of witchcraft. When I saw that he was able to get a draft pick for Kendrick Green, and look, all of us know that we don't mean any disrespect to these players. I mean, Kendrick Green, I think, was horribly miscast. I think it was totally unfair to him. That said, he struggled here as a Pittsburgh Steeler. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you would have told me that a team was going to give you, a couple of ham sandwiches for him, I would have said, it might be a bit much. I mean, he got a draft pick for Kendrick Green. Yeah. Scarp, so what was your level of surprise at that?
I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and there's no way the Steelers' MO has changed, right? Tomlin, Colbert, and Art II were sort of this, three-headed monster, but then you had support staff underneath. But when Kevin left, or Kevin was being phased out and then eventually left, Andy Weidel is a big name. Sheldon White is a big name. These guys have years of NFL experience. And then you add Tomlin and Art back into the mix, and Omar. So and then as Ian just said, you don't necessarily want to be tied to the previous people. Like, you need to make a name for yourself. And so I'm not sit here and say Omar just has the keys to the car and he's doing whatever he wants. But I do think that there is something there that is not Kevin. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because Kevin
Right.
Colbert has a case for Canton, right? He is a really good general manager.
No argument.
And he
Yep.
did a lot of great things. He had some mistakes. All teams do.
Yep.
So that's what I'm thinking about. This is like, Omar has been so active, and whether it's just him or he has the good supporting cast around him, which I believe it is, but
Mm-hmm.
Omar's been so active that um everybody's sort of on cloud nine right now. But what happens when there's a miss? He didn't draft Kendrick Green. He didn't draft Kevin Dotson.
Right.
He got some picks for him, which is I think Kevin Dotson was a pretty good football player.
Mhm.
He had his injuries, but like he was a fourth round pick that didn't even get a combine invite. Like, I don't really know how much people were were expecting of him, but I think he exceeded expectations. Kendrick Green, on the other hand, he was a third round pick. When you don't get, as a player, you don't get to pick and choose where you get drafted. It's just the way it is. But Omar's done some nice things. He's added some names, and I say names because we don't know what they're going to look like on the
Mm-hmm.
field yet. We know what
Mm-hmm.
they might have looked like with other teams. But Omar has definitely done a very, very nice job in his first official year, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Kevin
Kevin did the draft last year, and
That's
they
it.
kind of they searched over the summer.
That and
Yeah,
this is Omar's second year technically, but it's his first full year.
Yeah, his first year running the draft. Yeah, all that.
Yeah.
I think what Big Ben's burner here says is kind of like this cautionary tale for all fans. I liked Dotson too. I really liked the fact they got him. Kind of a steal there in the fourth round that year, and he was just a bulldozer. And you just thought, man, this is the type of scrapper that we need. And then he got banged up a little bit. And Steelers Nation is a wonderful fan base, but yeah, man, they can turn on you really, really quick. And when you're not healthy and you're not on the field, that's the easiest way to get turned on. And that's what happened. And it's sad. It's sad. He good guy, and wish him the best. Out in LA. Where they need O-line help out there big time. So he's probably going to plug right in out there.
And Dotson wasn't a bad player either. Like,
No.
he's starter capable in this league.
Yeah.
I think it's just we signed Isaac Seumalo, and that really put a stress on, like, what can Kevin Dotson do now? And the Steelers really value versatility in their backups. Like, look at the guys who made it as backups. Dylan Cook, who I was glad to see he made it over LaRaven Clark.
I'm glad you brought him up because that's a great story, Ian.
Yeah. And then
LaRaven Bengal Brown.
Yeah, right. It's Spencer Anderson, who played pretty much every position on the line, being a 7th round pick. Anderson, I hesitate to draw comparisons between current players or past players just because of like how good those guys turned out being. But Anderson reminds me a little bit of oh shit. I just lost his name. SMU 7th round lineman, played
Kelvin Beachum.
Kelvin Beachum. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry. I was like, I had the name in my head and I just lost it. Yeah, a little bit of Kelvin Beachum, because when Beachum came out, we plugged him in at center to start because that was the year Pouncey got hurt. And then Mike Adams was so bad they had to move him out to tackle, and he played like center guard and tackle that year. And I hesitate because Beachum's had a very nice NFL career to compare Spencer Anderson, who's never played a game, to Kelvin Beachum. But from what he can do, kind of similarly reminds me coming out. So
no, I get it, Ian. I think it's a great comparison.
And I think they kind of saw Dotson as like left guard only. And they had a better starting left guard, and they were like, we want our backups to be versatile. So that kind of made him expendable.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And I Yeah, it's one of those things where you just look at Omar Khan and they clearly had a plan. They liked the youth, like you said. You talked a little bit about Cook, talked a little bit about Anderson. They felt that they weren't going to lose much there. I do you guys, Scarps? I'll ask you guys this first. Would it surprise you if they went and found maybe a guy with some solid center experience to pair up maybe with some guard play, maybe a guy that can play both of those? I mean, they got obviously Mason Cole as your starter, and you got James Daniels in an absolute emergency. He can play center. We know that. I just don't see them being in any hurry to plug Spencer Anderson in at center for any long term, but maybe not. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think if they were that interested in somebody at that position, they probably would have already had him.
Yep.
Like you saw Desmond King, that was very quick. And we'll talk about him a little bit later, but
Yeah.
I mean, for years Tomlin's talked about position flexibility, and yeah, so if Mason Cole goes down, I think James Daniel is your backup center, right? Or James Daniels, not the former tight ends coach for the Steelers, James Daniels. Apologies. All right now. That's all James Daniel ever said was all right now.
All right now.
All right, man. All right, man. All right now. And Solomala, no, but Spencer Anderson seems like he has a little bit of flexibility.
Absolutely.
You know, yeah, I would say that they probably would have already signed somebody if they were that interested in it. I remember Cody Wallace a long time ago was one of those guys that could play center and guard, and he was a pretty good contributor for a couple of years here.
He
was a really good find.
Yeah, and that's exactly the type of guy I had in mind. Is somebody like a Cody Wallace. Let's go back to the wide receivers for a minute. With them keeping Gunnar Olszewski in 6 wide receivers, Ian, do you think that was the spot that replaced Zach Gentry?
Yeah, I think it was. And they also, let's not forget, kind of saved a spot by using Connor Hayward as like that tight end / fullback position. So I think that's still a little bit in flux. That when, because Gentry had that injury, and I think when he's healthy, I wouldn't be shocked if they brought him back. The key difference is if you waive injure a play, if you designate a player as waived / injured, then he has to clear, I don't remember if it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever the injury time frame is before you can re-sign him. But if he can pass a physical with another team, they can re-sign him whenever they want to, or they could sign him whenever they want to. So if just waiving Gentry kind of leaves him out there, and I mean, they could always put him on the practice squad or whatever. But that's the difference between doing a waiver and a waived injured.
No, and that's a good distinction to understand. And it's why we hear the phrase, gee, I bet you they told him not to leave town.
Yeah.
Scarps, just real quick, and I have no idea if you're going to be able to answer this, maybe more so than I think. What was your role when the 53 came out? Because obviously there were guys that were going to be moved around, maybe put on practice squad. Maybe they would be told, hey, we might trade you, so hang tight. I mean, what was your role in that?
You're on mute, Ryan.
You're on mute, man.
We've done Zoom for 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is.
This guy failed the pandemic.
Shit.
Is that possible?
Yeah. So the biggest thing was the roster. The media needed the most updated roster, so I just copy the main file and work for both of them. So if you lost a guy or whatever, you take him off the main one, and then if he got added back on, you threw him back on. But the 53 was the most important. But a lot of cross checking, a lot of going back and forth. Got to make sure. So I got
forgive me for interrupting you, but were you ever like given the task of were you guys told to call players and say,
"Oh fuck no, dude, that was the worst. That was literally cut down day, and it was much. It's different now than it was when I was
for
there. Because
sure?
I think when I was there, it was only the first couple years were straight 90 to 53.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think they sort of phased it out where it was like 90 to 75 to 53. No, those days were the worst. It was like dead man walking. You'd see a dude walk down the hall and it'd be
Oh
like, oh man,
man,
this poor bastard. But like you'd sit around and wait all day. So you get like, a couple at a time, sometimes maybe 10.
right.
But you'd be like, Jesus Christ, like how does this dude not know he's cut? And I know these dudes just wouldn't answer their phone. Like the team hotel, be like, sorry man, I didn't hear my phone or
Sounds
whatever.
like a Seinfeld episode.
They could stick around for a couple extra minutes. But yeah, I mean the biggest thing I had to do was just making sure the roster was up to date because we had to get that
Okay,
out ASAP.
gotcha.
But no, thank God I never had to like fire anybody or whatever. Like
Well, no, I
that was
didn't mean
fun.
necessarily that. What I meant was like, did you guys have to be like a go between if like let's say Tomlin and Kevin they had a player that they knew wasn't going to be on the initial 53, but they wanted him to stick around maybe because they were going to put him on the practice squad. I just
Oh, my
wanted.
bad. I'm sorry. No, like there would like we would get a list or whatever,
Yeah,
and then um through just conversations with some of the scouting staff,
right.
I'd be like, no way, right? They'd be like, no, and I'd be like, maybe. They'd be like, yeah. Like there would be certain things, but like also not being rude to any players or whatever, but like
Yeah,
you could clearly see who isn't gonna make it and who it like. There was only
yeah.
maybe 8 to 10 guys per year where you're like, I don't know, like this guy might actually make it, but the rest you're just like delete.
Ian? What does Mike Tomlin see in Gunnar Olszewski, and is he going to regret keeping him?
I mean, is he going to regret keeping him? Did he regret keeping him last year in that New England game when he fumbled the ball away to his former team? I never trust anybody that used to play for the Patriots after what happened with LeGarrette Blount.
No
Anyways,
shit.
at any rate, jokes aside, I
Yeah.
think he sees a guy who can be a backup in the slot, and he's looked good in the slot as a receiver. He's a decent route runner in both preseasons, but to me, he just screams like that 4A player that he looks good against backups, but he just doesn't have anything against starters. And I don't know. I mean, I guess they plugged him in a few times to like block. They played him like on the goal line as a blocking end player a few times last year to try and steal the edge, which was weird. I don't know. I don't necessarily get it, quote unquote, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what he sees in him, but I think it's one of those like they signed him to a 2-year contract and they know another team's going to pick him up, so if they cut him because there's other teams that are much more desperate for, guys than the Steelers are, so
And
there's
I
that.
think he's well liked. I think he's a hard worker. I think he's tough. But I mean, and the reason I said will he live to regret it because he made the one mistake against the one team that he absolutely could not have made the mistake against, as you talked about.
Yes.
I mean, if he's forced back there into a punt return situation and he does that again, I mean, it's gonna be ugly.
Let's not forget that Desmond King has some special teams return experience. So
yes, he does.
That could have gone into that too.
Yes. No, very, very, yeah. Scarps, you wanted to add something.
I mean, to be fair, we remember that play from Gunner in that New England game, but we forget Nelson Aguilar mossing whoever.
Ahkello Witherspoon.
Yes. Do we forget that defense? And I know TJ Watt couldn't stop one-legged Damian Harris, and on that final drive, like, and Mitch was terrible. Like, I understand that one play could make a game, but that offense last year was garbage.
Yeah.
Even at the latter portions of the season. So, we remember that play from Gunner, but somebody obviously likes him. And Pickett spoke highly of him. Mitch spoke highly of him. I think Mason did as well. Like, the other thing too is this is a young team, and Olszewski is only maybe fifth year or sixth year,
I think it's fifth.
Fifth year.
Yeah.
And regardless of what you feel about them, he did play for the Patriots. Like there's little nuances and things
Absolutely.
that people look for. So, I mean, I definitely bust his balls on here, on occasion, but I would also say too that again, we don't know what we're getting out of Calvin Austin. I know we've seen what he can do against 36 teamers. But what if Calvin Austin gets hurt again? Yeah, Desmond King has return experience, but Gunnar Olszewski's probably your guy, and I don't know. It's not the worst thing ever, but if they run jet sweeps to him, maybe he can pick up 20 to 25 every once in a while.
Sure, Scarps, 20 to 25 with Gunner on
And
the
you call
jet
me a
sweep.
hater.
Yeah. I'm not denying that, man. That dude is golden on a jet sweep for 3 yards. I mean, it just is. I mean, have you ever seen him actually get more than 3 yards? It's usually 3 yards or 2. It's just I'm sorry, it is, but and to your point earlier about using him on the goal line to seal an edge, I mean, come on, the guy's like 180 pounds soaking wet. It's just, but again, as was mentioned, the coaches know a hell of a lot more than we do.
It's true. And I think Ryan's point about the veterans is well taken. That they brought in Allen Robinson to help the young wide receivers. They brought in Patrick Peterson to help the young cornerbacks. They've done some things this offseason to try and help teach the young generation how to be a professional.
Yeah.
And Gunner probably plays into that a little bit too.
Some of the people in the chat are talking a little bit about Darnell Washington, and I, obviously again, you could have had a more serious injury with Zach Gentry than many of us know. Okay. But let's just say for sake of argument that he's maybe just a little dinged up and would have been okay. But they were so impressed with Darnell Washington's blocking ability, they decided they could move on from Gentry. I don't know that I'm there with Darnell Washington yet. I think he's a great blocker. I think he's going to be an excellent safety valve, if you will, for Kenny Pickett over the middle. I think there's a lot of great things about Washington. I just don't feel like I was ready to give up on Gentry yet. I don't know. Am I wrong?
Went to Michigan.
Yeah. And Tomlin did call him Blue. That was his nickname, Blue. I don't know. I mean, Ian, I'm not lying. There's a soft spot for that guy. And it's not necessarily because he went to Michigan. It's because he's a former quarterback. And most quarterbacks are not tough enough to turn themselves into a blocking tight end in the National Football League. And he did. So I have a ton of respect for him. But I watched some of those plays where it was him and it was Darnell Washington, and they were just blowing people away. And I thought, my God, what an awesome thing you could do with that. Now you can run play action off of that. You can go back the other way. I mean, just so many cool things they could have done, and they chose not to. And okay, yeah, I'm going to ride with Mike Tomlin on this one, but that doesn't mean I don't have some doubts. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it was an injury thing. I wouldn't be surprised to see him back by like week 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think you're right. And yeah, who was not terrible was Rodney Williams.
He was on the practice squad. They put him on the
and I'm glad they did. He was not terrible at all. And I mean, you'd think when you're talking about a guy who's like your 4th or 5th tight end, it's like, okay, dude, we just need some bodies. Can you go out and be a body for a minute? He showed some ability at times, blocking, catching a couple passes. So, who knows? Maybe there's a future for him down the road too. The Desmond King thing. Do we have an idea of what his addition speaks to the most? And by that I mean, because he's played more on the boundary than the slot. Is this something about that? Is it actually about the slot? They're not overly thrilled with Riley and Sullivan. I'm trying to figure it out, I guess, is what my point is.
Ryan seemed like he had a point, so I'll let him go first.
Yeah. He's on mute again. What is this guy like?
Scarps, come on. Head in the game.
What's going on there, man?
Shaking my head. The
Scarps was farting and didn't want us to hear it.
Fucking just
passing gas.
Soiled the undies. Here's a guy who doesn't know when he's on mute. The two things. First thing is that the Steelers didn't like what they saw at a certain position, whether that's slot or not. And two, the second thing is if the guy ain't good enough to make the Texans, what are we really talking about here? And I know Joe Hayden, almost 5 years ago, 6 years ago to the day. But Joe Hayden was like a perennial Pro Bowl caliber player. That's a Tomlinism. And Desmond King isn't bad. I think he's made a Pro Bowl one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But like, I don't know. What's okay, but here's the other thing. What's it say when the Texans want Kendrick Green but don't want Desmond King? So I don't know.
It's a good question. And I'm going to simply leave it to this, and I'll let Ian address this. That's a brand new coaching staff down there. DeMeco Ryans, great player, pretty good defensive coordinator. I hope he does well down there. But clearly they're still trying to find their way, and you wonder, was it a money thing with King? I don't think so. So I don't know. Ian, go ahead.
Yeah. So with Desmond King, I think one of the reasons they signed him was Sullivan and Riley aren't real good run defenders out of the slot. And I think ever since they lost Mike Hilton, they've been looking for that guy who can play the run out of the slot corner position. Mm-hmm. And I think King is capable of doing that. Our good friend Derek on Twitter was posting some cut up clips this evening of King playing the run very well out of the slot corner position. And I'm not saying Desmond King is Mike Hilton because he's a completely different player, but I think he has that willingness to stick his nose in there against the run. And I think that was something they didn't see enough of out of either Sullivan or Riley to be like comfortable throwing them out there on a second down, right? You throw those guys out there on a third down where it's a passing down. You're like, all right, they're coverage guys. They're going to cover okay. You throw them out there on like a 2nd and 8 when a team could run a draw play on you or could throw the ball. You want a guy who's going to stick his nose in there. So there's that. The other thing with the Texans and Kendrick Green, let's not forget they had like 3 offensive linemen get injured this week.
Yeah.
They're desperate for like a warm body and are probably looking at a guy who's like, well, he's got 17 starts in his career, now they're probably not realizing he's got like concrete shoes and concrete gloves that he's wearing out there that can't move his feet or his hands, but nevertheless, and there were rumors floating around that the Texans like Kendrick Green back in the draft year he came out and things like that, and that's possible, but hey, it's all about team needs at a given time, right? We were very fortunate to get through this preseason with no significant injuries, right? Like, a Zach Gentry dinged up here, a Trey Norwood dinged up there, like Ogunjobi with a foot maybe, but I took it as a very good sign they didn't put Ogunjobi on IR. So we mostly made it through the preseason unscathed. There were other teams that like the Texans losing 3 starting linemen. It's like, hey, they got to go out and find somebody they can.
No, you're right. You're right. I want to add that Jen's having a great night in the chat tonight, and I want to address 2 things she talked about. Number one, she did bring up when we were talking a little bit about Gentry being cut. She talked about Pat Freiermuth and his concussion history, and that's something that we've talked about on the show before, and I completely forgot about it tonight, and we should have mentioned it. So thanks to her for mentioning that. And then, she talked a little bit about, what the word is on King, a little bit of a party animal off the field. Maybe the coaches didn't want to deal with that anymore. We'll see what happens in Pittsburgh. See if he's hanging on down at the Strip, and
I ain't not going down the Strip. You go down the south side.
South side. I was gonna say. Yeah, I wanted to say something.
Tell me you're not from Pittsburgh without telling me you're not from Pittsburgh. Fuck. Come on, man.
I love stirring the pot. In any case, yeah. So I good night for her. Thanks, Jen. You're doing awesome, and everybody's doing awesome. What the hell, What was I going to move on to? I know what it was. Inside linebacker. I was surprised that they did not keep a fifth. Now, whether it be Kwiatkowski, whether it have been Tanner Muse, who, by the way, Chargers picked him up today.
Yeah, Chargers picked him
up. I thought they would keep one of those guys. Not even so much just to be an inside linebacker, because they wouldn't really see the field with the four guys we got ahead of them, but special teams. So I was a little surprised by that. And then they stuck with 4 outside linebackers, just your 2 starters, your 2 reserves. Scarps, were you a little surprised by that, or not surprised at all?
I wasn't really that surprised.
Okay. Yeah, I was a little. I just thought they'd like that special teams depth. Yeah, Ian?
I think the thing we all forgot about, and myself included, I'm going to own this one, that they think of Keanu Neal like a dime backer. That they think of Keanu Neal as a guy that in dime, they can put KZ and Fitzpatrick deep and put Neal at a linebacker position.
Yeah, great point.
So I think Neal kind of serves like that 5th linebacker. And that's probably the best role for him, is being in the box and not having to cover area. I think, giving him that ability to play in the box and potentially play downhill or spy a little bit. And the thing we have to remember too is, with the schedule we have and the increase in mobile quarterbacks around, you need a guy who can sit there and spy Lamar Jackson. Your job is to watch Lamar Jackson and nobody else, and just follow him wherever he goes. Or whoever else, right? That there's plenty of mobile enough quarterbacks. I mean, heck, we've seen Justin Herbert make plays with his feet, that Herbert's not the most fleet of foot guy, but if you can pick up a 3rd and 5 with your feet and turn it into a first down, that's a tremendous asset to the offense. And I think we actually might see more of that out of Pickett this year too. As as the coaching staff starts to trust him more. I think last year he was very much a, play within the structure of what we called. But this year, I think, at least what I saw out of the preseason, is they may give him a little bit more room to improvise a little bit.
Ryan, what did you think of Cole Holcomb in the preseason? I'm just curious as to what your observations were.
I mean, he's fine. I've said this on the show. I don't think he should be your starter. I think it should be Quan Alexander and Landon Roberts. But he didn't really show me anything that I didn't already know. I don't think he did that great in coverage, which is fine. I mean, he's a big dude. He's a run stopper.
Yeah.
But I think I think you need to put. And nobody plays base defense anymore, but I think you need to put your best players on the field. And like Ian just said, if that means Keanu Neal is taking more snaps as a rover or a dime backer, I don't really care. Just but bottom line is, you got to get pressure on the quarterback. That's just the way it is. We saw what happened last year without TJ Watt. If TJ Watt gets hurt, your season's done. I mean, I'm just being honest. And
right.
And he came back last year, and he even talked about it. He was not the same.
No.
He made plays, but he just wasn't the same. I just wanted to be clear about that. But put your best guys on the field and then see what happens. But the other I said the other teams want to win too.
I want to ask you the same question. What was your impression of Cole Holcomb? Being able to watch him for a couple games.
I thought he struggled in coverage, but they played some extremely vanilla coverage too. Yeah. But I think he struggled in coverage. I think Ryan is right though that your starters should be Quan Alexander and Landon Roberts, and then probably let Keanu Neal come in for Roberts in obvious passing situations, just to kind of give you that third safety heavy-ish look. Mm-hmm. And really, a defense with, let's take best case scenario, right? You got TJ, Cam, Ogunjobi, or Benton, but we'll say Ogunjobi, and Highsmith, and then Quan Alexander in the middle, and then a defensive backfield with Keanu Neal, Minka, KZ, probably a Patrick Peterson, a Levi Wallace, and pick your poison, right? Maybe part of the Desmond King deal was they didn't quite feel ready enough to put Joey Porter Jr. on the outside and slide Pat Pete into the inside. So they were like, let's go get another guy who can play the slot that we can plug in. So, maybe it's Desmond King, maybe it's Sullivan, maybe it's Riley, one of those guys. But I don't know. I think they've taken steps to make them. Let me back up.
Okay.
I have PTSD from Ben being on the show.
Don't we all?
Yeah. They've taken steps to put new bodies in positions where they were below the line last year. I'm not going to say they've taken steps to be better at positions, because I don't know if these guys are actually going to be better than what we had before, but they've taken steps to make changes at positions where they needed improvement. So that's in an off season. That's really all you can ask for, is try and get better at positions of weakness. And I feel like they've brought in veteran guys at those positions to try and get better at those positions of weakness.
And I think maybe if there was a knock on Kevin for a little while, it seemed like there was this kind of ignoring certain positions, even though everybody kind of knew they needed to address them. And I'll give Omar some credit. It's not like he's bringing in world beaters, but he's at least addressing the positions, and so I like that part of it. And I agree with both of you guys. I had higher expectations for Holcomb. I thought he would be a little better in coverage. He was trailing guys a lot more than I thought he would. But that said, he is a run stuffer first. And will likely be used in that role. And as some of the people in the chat have said, it's great to have flexibility and versatility to be able to do that. So, I don't know. I was just curious as to what your takes were on that. I think as far as the roster goes, it is what it is now at this point. I don't see too much more happening, barring an injury ahead of the week 1 game with the Niners, which again is about 9-10 days away. Did I see today that Bosa is coming in? He's gonna report full time, kind of a thing. He's wants to play week 1, or did I misinterpret something?
I didn't see that. I don't know. So
okay, I was just curious. I thought I saw something about that.
I didn't see that either. But
okay,
that doesn't mean it ain't true.
Right, and I he's a very good player, and obviously they're a different defense, much like when TJ's on the field and when he's not. Same for us. I was just curious of that. I thought I saw that somewhere. Any other thoughts on the roster, guys?
I would say that there's a lot of names on this roster, but that doesn't mean anything.
Expand upon that. What do you mean?
This might be, at least, there are a lot of names on this roster. Patrick Peterson, Quan Alexander, Isaac Solomalu, Allen Robinson, Most of your free agent, Desmond King, your free agent guys that you brought in here, right? They're a bunch of names, nameless gray faces. Although that would mean that they don't have names. But they're not new to the game, but they're new to the Steelers.
Yeah.
And just because they were once good somewhere else does not mean that that success will carry over to here. So that being said, give them some time. Keanu Neal, there's another guy.
Yeah.
Give them some time. See what happens. And you don't lose a season in the first 4 games. So just take a sip and chill out.
Well, I was thinking about this today, and I see some of the guys, as Freak was mentioning it. They got the first 5 weeks, and then they get a week 6 bye. 3 of those first 5 games are at home. You get the Niners, Browns back to back. You go on the road for the Texans, the Raiders and the Texans, and you come home for Baltimore, and then you get the bye week. Do they have to come into the bye week at absolute worst 3-2, Ian?
I don't know. I mean, no, I'm not going to say absolute worst because you never know what happens in an NFL season, right? I think back to like 2017 that we were looking at the schedule and like there was a murderer's row of quarterbacks we were going to have to face. There was like Aaron Rodgers and all these other guys,
exactly,
right? Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. And, no, it wouldn't have been Russell. They different divisions, but there was this murderer's row of quarterbacks we were going to have to face. And then like all of them got injured and we faced backups like 5 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
So you can look at the schedule and be like, oh, it's so hard in the second half. And yeah, if everybody's at full strength, if you're playing Madden where nobody gets hurt. Yeah. But you never know. And I think you got to be careful in an NFL season not to peak too soon. And with a young team that's coming off a hot preseason, like,
and a hot finish to last year.
And a hot finish to last year, right? Like the arrow's pointing up. They're trending in the right direction, but like what's going to happen to their confidence if they lose 2 games in a row, right? You don't, you want them to keep going on that upward trajectory, but like you got to kind of stay even keeled and level about it, not get too high and not get too low. Like a loss isn't the end of the world, but a win doesn't mean they're winning the Super Bowl. You don't win or lose the Super Bowl in September, like Ryan said. Well, I guess you could lose it if like you're the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes were to get hurt. The year Ben Roethlisberger got hurt, we lost the Super Bowl in September.
No
like
doubt
there
about
was
it.
no way that we were going to make a run without Ben Roethlisberger that year. So, when you have a franchise quarterback, which I don't know if we have one yet. This is going to be a year to kind of.
This is the year to find out, I think.
Finding that out. Yeah. Although there was, who was it? One of the like famous NFL execs used to say, like, people would ask him if he had a franchise quarterback, and he'd say, like, did you draft a franchise quarterback? And he would say, ask me after year 3. Like, year 3 is really the year where you can tell, like, does this guy have it or not? And
that's the way we talk about draft picks. Ask me in 3 years.
Yeah, and we're in year 2. So you just want to see the upward trajectory with Kenny continue. But I don't know if I'm definitive. Now, okay. If Kenny goes out and wins the Super Bowl this year, then I will definitively say we have a franchise quarterback. But short of that, and you know what? Even if he were to make the AFC Championship game, I might say we have a franchise quarterback. But short of that, I'm not sure if I'm ready yet to say we have a franchise quarterback. We have a young quarterback who is trending in the right direction, but I'm not sure yet if he's a franchise quarterback. So my expectations are good. Everything's going in a good direction. I want to see him carry it through. But, this is very different than the teams of the early 2010s where you had seen them do it and you were disappointed when they didn't because you knew they were capable of more. Whereas this team, you're not sure what they're capable of. So it's kind of a different level of excitement.
It's a fascinating direction to go in terms of what will it take for any of us to consider him the franchise quarterback. Do you need to see him win a playoff game? Do you need to see him get to the AFC title game? Does he have to get to the Super Bowl? Scarps.
So I know what you guys are saying, but
Mm-hmm.
there's no chance that Kenny Pickett does not get a second contract with the Steelers.
Whoa.
There's no, that's just not like this team doesn't fire head coaches. This team is not going to do that. Like they're not
Right.
they're just not going to do that. And I've said this before, like I have never crowned Pickett, I've never trashed Pickett. I joke about it on here because Steelers Sunshine Twitter is so fucking over the top about him. It's ridiculous. But like Ian, if the Steelers win the Super Bowl this year, I would bet that it's not because of what Kenny Pickett did. You're right. I would bet that it's more than what he didn't do. And he didn't turn the ball over. He was smart with the football, and they didn't have a lot of injuries. And their defense played really well, and they ran the ball effectively. And they made routine plays routinely and made clutch plays when necessary. But to think that Kenny Pickett this year is somehow going to be as lethal as Patrick Mahomes, or I know people don't like him, Joe Burrow is already one of the most clutch players in league history. He's just as clutch as look up depending on what statistics he used. Like Burrow.
Now here's a guy that likes statistics.
Here's a guy that follows PFF. So like until like to think that like Pickett is all of a sudden going to make this jump is absurd. And people are throwing out 40 touchdowns. Like what are you high? Are you on crack? Like Ben only threw 34 is the most that Ben ever threw in a season. 34. So he's in a best Ben by 6 touchdowns. And here's the thing. They'd be dumb. They would be dumb to let him beat Patrick Mahomes or try to beat Patrick Mahomes. They need to I'm not saying they need to play archaic like the
they need to
Patriots
be
are probably going to
balanced.
play this year. like the Patriots are probably going to be running a football 50 times a year this year.
They should be.
But they should be they should give him more of a leash and see what he can do. But if he throws 25 touchdowns this year, I think that's a huge improvement. And if he throws 25 touchdowns this year, I think they're 9-10 win team, which might get in and might not. I don't know.
Well, we're going to talk about that next week because we're going to have a lot of over and unders to discuss next week when we do our huge 2023 season extravaganza. And yes,
so what
I'm
you're
calling
saying
it
is
extravaganza.
we might go a little bit over time
because
we have so much to cover.
It's possible there could be the word overtime involved next week.
Well, it is. I mean,
yeah.
The NFL kickoff is next Thursday.
Right. Yeah. Chiefs Lions will be on, and the ratings will be very competitive. They'll get some ratings. We'll have very close ratings to what they're getting.
You ready for that upset?
Mark lives in Michigan. He was born waiting for this upset.
Oh my God. You know what? I'll say this. I love talking to Lions fans. They really truly are diehards, and they are as excited as they've ever been this year. Literally going back to the Barry Sanders years, even back then they still were kind of like, we got Barry, but that's about it. You know, they're excited. I'm happy for them. I hope they do well. But at the same time, I've been around here a long, long time, and I've seen high expectations come crashing down to earth really, really fast. And then the Red Wings start and nobody even remembers the Lions were around. So that's just how it works around here. But anyway, why, Ian, why did the Steelers keep Braden Mann?
That's a good question. Well, the Patriots cut all their punters and all their quarterbacks except one.
I love Belichick, man. The dude cracks me up.
So that said, you know, I had two theories. One was that they were trying to trade him. Yeah. The other one was that because he didn't have enough accrued seasons to he had to pass through waivers if he got cut.
Right.
So the idea was they liked both him and Harvin enough. They wanted to put him on the practice squad. And the hope was that, the initial round of cuts, there's guys that get signed to rosters off of guys that get cut. All that stuff happens usually within the first day, because then after that, teams start signing guys to practice squads. So I think the idea was, let's hold on to him for like 2 days, and then we'll cut him and see if we can like sneak him through waivers to the practice squad. And nobody claimed him on waivers today. So they did get him. He cleared waivers, so he is eligible to re-sign with the practice squad if he wants to come back here. So there's that.
Yeah, it was. I think.
And oh, sorry, can I jump in one more thing?
Of course.
Though? I think the idea of having Man on the practice squad is Man's kind of a known commodity that they know what they have, and Harvin is inconsistent. So the idea of having a punter on the practice squad would be that Harvin, though making the roster, would have a very short leash, that it's like, if you screw up, we're going to bring this other guy up and you're gone. So, it may have been that they were so close, they stuck with the guy they knew rather than the other guy, but the hope was they could bring the other guy also back. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it almost reminds me, and Ian, I know you love a good history analogy here. It almost reminds me, if Man does go to the practice squad, it reminds me a little bit of the whole Cortez and why he burned his ships. He's they're motivating Presley Harvin. Like, look, buddy, your replacement is right there.
Yep.
He's literally right there. And you can see him every day. He's punting right alongside of you, and you better do the job, or else this guy's coming in. And maybe that's what the plan is. Because let's be honest, there was more expected of Presley Harvin through his first couple of years. Fair or not fair, he went through a horrible time with his father being ill and passing away. Nobody would ever deny that part of it. But it's a business, and you need people to perform well. So I don't know. I found it very interesting. By the way, the Patriots did sign Matt Corral today. The former Panther. I liked the kid. I thought he was a tough kid coming out of Ole Miss. I thought he would have a better shot, but it just didn't work out.
Did you see that? Somebody tweeted that the Patriots traded with the Panthers.
I saw
whatever
this.
and then the Panthers selected Matt Corral. So and then the Patriots literally got him off waivers today or whatever.
Yep.
And they gave up nothing to get him. Like I know they suck and we don't like them, but like Belichick's not an idiot.
No.
That dude,
the dude is.
He's literally he's like we're not going to give up that too much, because like next year he's going to be like right here with us. So. I love Lawrence. I love Lawrence.
It just always seems to work for that asshole. I don't know how it just does. I don't know. And by the way, I'd like to mention that I'm very disappointed that Ben has not jumped in the chat tonight. I really thought he would be here. I'm going to probably lay some odds that he's passed out. But who knows? And I did see Johnny in a little earlier, and I don't know if Johnny.
I almost said "fuck you, Johnny."
I know if Johnny's still listening, fuck you, Johnny. Just so we get that out of the way. In any case, we're anything else to cover tonight, guys? Before Casey Kasem steps up from the grave.
I just want to say thank God that football's back next week.
Oh my God!
Because I can't take this shit anymore. Like, just there's just so much downtime, and the NFL. Believe it or not, the NFL was once not a 365-day a year type of thing. Like there really truly was an off season, and nobody cares, and nobody cared as much. But I'm just happy to be back and happy I haven't been fired from the show like Shannon Sharp or
like I almost was today,
or Max Kellerman or whatever,
Yeah, it is a glorious time of year. It just is. I really do enjoy summer. But when football season comes around, and it was great tonight. I was just kind of getting ready for the show, and Minnesota, Nebraska was on. I got a former student that plays for Minnesota, a teammate of my son's, and so it's awesome to see him out there running around, living his dream, and it's just a great time of year. and the NFL. I mean, before we know it, guys, we'll be talking about week 5, week 6, week 7, and it flies by once it gets going. But oh, look who's there!
Hey,
Da-da-da-da!
about time.
Yeah, and right on the heels, Freak totally destroys him. The strip bar Ben is at doesn't have Wi-Fi. All right, you ready, Casey Kasem?
Yeah, give me 1 sec. Give me a second.
Sure.
Keep the conversation going.
We'll keep it going. All right.
Sorry, I didn't realize this.
Ben just woke up. He probably just heard Dave Matthews sing "Crash Into You" for about the 8th time today. Not my fault. You guys are dicks. Okay, maybe 9th time.
I don't know. All Dave songs.
No catch. He didn't catch that ball.
I don't know where he is. I have no idea. All I know is he's on vacation.
Okay, here we go. All right.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Casey Kasem.
My sweet lord. Casey's Coast to Coast American Top 40. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week that was August 31st, 1991. Our favorite correspondent, Ryan, is once again back with us this week, and he writes, Dear Casey, you may notice I no longer have a mustache. I was hoping to pay homage to Bill Cowher, the guy that won the Super Bowl with Tomlin's players, but it ended up being about as useless as Ron Stark's 33.3 net yards per punt average back in 1995.
Wow.
But let's be real, Casey. It just wasn't a good look. It was actually creepy. Casey, I still don't quite know if I have that dog in me, but I do know that I'm not allowed within 30 yards of a school or playground. Let's get back on track here. Casey, I'm one to entertain a good conspiracy theory. The JFK assassination, the moon landing, Hillary Clinton drinking children's blood. Casey, don't act like you don't know about Pizzagate. And then there's a more recent one involving a young lady on an airplane who went viral for saying that motherfucker is not real. Casey, as you know, the internet did its thing. People from all walks of life chimed in on who she was actually talking about. Casey, I know exactly who she was speaking to. That motherfucker isn't real is none other than Steelers general manager Omar Khan. Casey, Omar is hotter than 2 rats fooling around in a wool sock at a dumpster in a Texas parking lot in July. The man simply hasn't missed. I'm certain he has a great support staff, but I cannot take away all that he's accomplished this offseason. Unfortunately, teams do not win championships in the offseason, but you can feel the momentum shifting. As Steelers Sunshine Twitter has told me, these aren't the same old Steelers. Again, Casey, I don't know what that means, but I do know I'm listening to the wind of change. Well, Ryan, first and foremost, thanks for shaving that mustache. I felt like I needed to issue an Amber Alert the moment I saw you last Thursday evening. Secondly, thank you for so much for your continued support of a dead DJ whose family is still fighting over his remains. Up to number 4 this week. Here's the Scorpions off their album Crazy World. Here's Wind of Change.
Nice.
Hey, anytime you can work in a Scorpions reference, man, that's good stuff right there. The 2 rats in a sock, that's fucking brilliant.
That was wow.
Can I ask where that came from?
So it was actually the former Seattle Mariners great Ichiro Suzuki.
Really?
Yeah, Ichiro was asked one time about what it was like playing playing the Rangers in Texas. It was ballpark at Arlington at the time, and he was like, "It's hotter than 2 rats screwed in a wool sock."
That's fantastic. That's a great line. That's awesome. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for jumping on. As always, we just so appreciate and are so grateful for all of you that come on and are with us live every single week. And we are just as grateful for those of you that check out the show, either just listening in on some free time or whether you check out the YouTube broadcast on your time too. Thank you so much. Make sure you check out the website, steelcityblitz.com. Ian has all kinds of wonderful WPIAL stuff. If you are a fan,
week one's happening.
Yep. If you are a fan of Western Pennsylvania high school football, Aaron. Why do I keep saying Aaron? Oh, because I'm looking at his name right here. Idiot. Ian
Mark
has you covered. I'm biased. I'm absolutely biased. I don't care. Nobody does WPIAL football better than Ian does. And that goes for everybody at the big papers, everything else he does. He just does a fantastic job, tremendous research, and great stats and stuff. And he's got a podcast that he covers with Bruce Badgley as well. So
the WPIAL Blitz show, which is now live on Monday nights at like 9:15.
Look at this guy. He's a podcasting guru.
The guy just doesn't stop.
Now here's a guy.
This week might be Tuesday because Monday's Labor Day and I'll be drunk. But Tuesday this week. But
that's a very fair reason.
Monday every other week for the WPIAL.
It's a very fair reason. Yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody. This has been the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. And hey, go Steelers.
Oh, the Ravens suck.
Yeah, thank you, Ian.
They do. Fuck those guys. And fuck the Browns.
I hate the
Browns, Bengals, they all suck. All right. Good night, everybody.
Screw them.